Welcome to today's podcast interview. I am joined by Siobhan De Paor, who is an Irish language poet and cultural revivalist. Siobhan is a woman that I connected with many moons ago, actually during the Girl Against Fluoride campaign. That was when we began our relationship together. And many years later, I met her and she was quite heavily pregnant with her partner, Dermot, and you were talking to me all about this concept, free birth. I'd never heard of it. And you were the woman that planted the seed in my consciousness many years before I ever conceived my child. And yeah, so thank you so much for being the cultural revivalist in my life and giving me the birth of my absolute dreams. And I wouldn't have even been able to tap into that as a possibility only for you. So thank you so much, Siobhan, for who you are.
Thank you so much, Ashley. I mean, this is it, like a conversation. How powerful a conversation can be around birth and talking about birth is, I think, one of the most profound things we can do, and one of the things we do the least. It's not a story we exchange so much. There's so many women that come out of hospitals or after, and they're like, nobody told me. Nobody told me. I think the birthing rites where we used to gather around and share our stories afterwards need to be revived as well. And that's another thing that's being revived,
Yeah. So yeah, today we're going to be talking about a whole host of topics, but we're going to touch a little bit on your birth because for me, in the work that I'm doing with women and the work that I intend to do as my kind of overall passion and the piece that I want to offer to the culture is to really understand that there is possibilities around birth that actually exist outside of what you currently understand as what's available. So a lot of women that will be talking to me are interested in home birth, but they don't necessarily know how to go about it or how to resource themselves to even access that. So I'd love to hear just a kind of, an overview of your story and what led to the free birth of your son at home. And it's just such an important story to share because those details really matter. Because if you're a woman over the age of 39, you are most likely going to be disqualified from a home birth within the HSE, within the medical model. So yeah, just give us an overview of your story and what's actually possible for women.
When I eventually free birthed my third son, I was a 41-year-old VBAC. Vaginal birth after C-section is high risk. With my previous daughter, I had placenta previa, so I had to go into hospital for a C-section, even though I was planning a free birth at home. But the previa is where the placenta is blocking the cervix, so it's one of those rare cases where intervention actually is needed. So it was a really interesting situation for me to be in, because for my first birth with Ishna, it was a hospital birth where, again, I planned to free birth at home, but it just, the labor was extended and I had no support. And so I kind of like the fear creeped in, and I let doubt sort of bring me to the hospital instead of staying at home in trust. I didn't expect like a 2 to 3 day labor. I wasn't ready for that. And so, the doubt comes in. I think if I had been a little bit more prepared, if somebody said, you know what, it might take 3 days, you just hang tight, that, even that sentence would have helped me. But I went in for Ishna, and it was a real battle from start to finish. It was horrendous, really, the treatment that we got in there. Really hostile pushing of antibiotics, when I was in full labor, pushing syncitocin, which I was refusing all the time, to speed up the labor. Just a lot of interventions that I had to refuse. I mean, he was hours old when they wanted to give him this broad range of antibiotics, and he hadn't even had colostrum. And I was saying, no, what about the microbiome? These best practice information that I had, that didn't seem to that they certainly had because they're college educated, but that didn't seem to apply within the hospital policy. So I learned firsthand how hospital policy is really just written by insurance actuaries, and not by doctors even,
Yeah.
and so this culture of to show, if you have shown that you have intervened as much as possible, then your liability is reduced, and that's where the hospital is coming from. But for a
Yeah.
mother, and for what we know of physiological birth, the more intervention there is, the more dangerous it is. So it's like it's two completely opposing worldviews there, and when they come together, uh, it's it's a battle, and it's a battle at the very time where you need to be in full peace. You're in battle mode, and no woman should have to go through that, because your vulnerability, I mean, like you said, we met on the fluoride campaign, we're activists, like, but when you're in that space, you just you're vulnerable, you're
Hmm.
so vulnerable. You want to
Yeah.
protect what's coming out of you, and then think, when as soon as this child is out, we're taking him to give him antibiotics. I had refused antibiotics myself. I'm not a person who takes antibiotics. I believe in supporting the system. I don't believe in going after and killing the germ, that it's not
Hmm.
my um so for them to say that, like, then I was like birthing in fear, like, as soon as the baby comes out, they're going to take him and give him antibiotics. Like, to say that to a birthing mother, that Dermot had to stand in front of me bodily, for they were trying to, like, to wash and clean the baby. That's what they were going to, we need to take him. But this sort of emergency, it's an emergency, it's an emergency. But nobody could tell me why it was an emergency exactly, just that it was a prolonged labor. But that prolonged labor was, again, very arbitrary because, in other countries, it wouldn't have been considered prolonged. So in Ireland, we have a highly medicalized model where, after the waters break, you've got, I think, 18 hours to get that baby out before the routine administration of antibiotics. And, those antibiotics, to give a child that antibiotic, which means anti-life, which wipes out their virgin microbiome, and allows it to be imprinted with a chronic disease imprint that's floating around the hospital instead of the mother's imprint that will have her antibodies and the blueprint of their future wealth, to wipe out that microbial blanket in the first hours of life because you took more than 18 hours to give birth, like, is insane. And
Hmm.
children, the amount of issues that can come up with the baby then afterwards, and having a newborn baby is hard enough. Like, when you're dealing with colic and sleepless nights and sickness and eczema and all those, you're like, all the knock-on effects of that, like, and then postpartum depression, of course, because it's just all too much. And
Yeah.
already it's hard because a woman is raising her child in isolation without the village model anymore. So it's it's really like a war on mothers and babies. That's what I felt like I was in, and then they wouldn't let me out and they had to keep me for observation. And it was all for my, for you, for your well-being and the well-being of the child. It's in your best interest. This is how it's, but it
No.
wasn't in my best interest. It
No.
was just going what the book says.
Yeah.
Um, so that was issue, and that was a real education for me. And I felt it was a necessary part of the journey so that I could become a proper advocate and understand what it was like on the inside.
Hmm.
Um, and even though I was all well read and well prepared and everything, like, I still got the short shrift. I still had to go through it. Now, I
Hmm.
was lucky in that I had a natural birth, that I did refuse those interventions, that I had a partner at my side who went to bat for me, even when I was in my mammalian delirium, you know what I mean, who said no and who stood the
Hmm.
ground with me. Um, and I had family support, and I think, there's an awful lot of women who go in there who just get bamboozled and they end up getting a C-section, and I've spoken to an awful lot of them now because I've now, the birth story advocacy has become part of my art, and I do one woman shows as well, and poetry. And so I've become sort of a focal point for women who want to talk about this stuff. And so I've heard an awful lot of stories at this point. And they're really a common theme, is just like, I'm not really sure why I was given a C-section, I'm not
Yeah.
sure what happened. All of a sudden, it was an emergency. So the emergency is created by the intervention. And that's the message to get to women out there, that this life-saving intervention is actually jeopardizing the safe delivery. And what you're talking about, this risk of death, risk culture
Mm.
that is within the hospital insurance model, is not even remotely weighed against the long-term health risks, which are much greater, much,
Yeah.
much greater.
Yeah.
You know, so if there's a 0.6% chance that the child will get sepsis, and because of that 0.6%, there's the routine antibiotics. But then if you give those antibiotics, there's a 30% chance that that child will have digestive issues, will have more likely to develop lung issues. You know, like the odds are so, so much greater of health harm than they are of death. You know, so that's what you know, it doesn't make any sense from our perspective. So for women like I say women like me, women like us, I don't know. I mean, I think women, you know, mothers, I just think all mothers want to birth their children at home in familiarity, in an uninterrupted. I know some women want the hospital and the support and the feeling of safety. But if that feeling of safety could be replicated at home, would they want to go to hospital? You know, I think if the desire to go to hospital and that belief in the necessity of hospital is just because it's cultural at this stage. It's just
Yeah.
a cultural program that we go to hospital for birth. But
Yeah.
it's a relatively recent cultural program comparative to our whole history. But you know, it's a new phenomenon. Modern obstetrics is just that. It's modern obstetrics. It didn't exist before. You know, like Queen Victoria, she lay on her back so that the surgeons could deliver the baby. And then this was then popularized because if the Queen's doing it, then it's the way to do it, you know.
Mhm.
That previously was never the way, and there was never a doctor nor a man present. It was a ban coward, a handy woman, a woman of the village. And her experience didn't come from college or hospitals. It came from just doing it a lot. And and this is the culture now that we're reviving in Ireland because
Yeah.
I suppose we the hospital isn't offering us it isn't offering us a safe place to birth our babies because of policy being dictated by insurance liability um, imperatives. It isn't.
Mhm.
Like in the examples I've just. So now what we want is a home birth service, but we don't have a home birth service in Ireland. You know, we've got less than, I can't say we don't have it. It's there. A few lucky places, a few lucky women can get it. You know, but the conditions to get it are if you're over 39, you're kind of automatically ruled out. If you're a VBAC, you're automatically ruled out. If you live in a remote area where two midwives can't serve you, like Kerry, where I lived for Ishna, you're automatically, you have. So the service is extremely limited, and there's good pockets around West Cork. There's a domino there's a domino service where there's a midwife who will come out to you from the hospital, but if she's scheduled on at the hospital, you have to go in. So it's, you know, so you don't know until the moment of labor that you're actually going to get your home birth. And even if you're applying for a home birth, they don't sign off on you until the 38-week scan. So you don't know until 38 weeks, really, you can't rest assured that you're going to have your birth at home. So a pregnant mother who needs just above all else, a feeling of stability, surety, uh, and sureness is given the very opposite. She's given vagaries. She's given, we'll have to wait and see, maybe up until the last minute. She's given maybes of where she's going to birth her baby. Um, and you know, that home birth service, why is it so woefully underfunded? Why is it so woefully understaffed? Because in Ireland we don't have any training for community midwives. It's an obstetric led. So within midwifery college in Ireland, all the training is done in a hospital setting. So those midwives, that as they're called midwives, but essentially, technically, they would be obstetric nurses because they support. They don't have any community modules. You know, they don't go out to the home, so they don't have that experience. So all the community midwives that we have in Ireland have to train abroad. They have to go to the UK or somewhere else to get that kind of training that you need to be a home birth midwife. So you know the pool isn't there, and we yeah, it's an impossible choice. It's quite an impossible choice for Irish women, and so we have chosen home birth, a free birth now. And free birth is what you did and what I did and what more and more women are doing. um and because we went it alone, you and I, and there's now the next level of that culture is coming in, which is really exciting and
Mhm.
beautiful. And in Ireland, of course, it's illegal if you have a license. If you're a licensed midwife, you can't attend a pregnant woman unless the obstetrician has signed off on her, uh, and you're insured. And that the home birth midwives are insured by the HSC, you see. So they're still within the system because they still have those same insurance requirements that says if a mother's blood pressure goes up, you have to transfer to that. So they have to call the ambulance on you or risk losing their license. So you're still courting the system. You still don't have that ease, and blood pressure and things like blood pressure going up, prolonged labor, all of those things are very, very normal things in labor. So very normal things they have made them,
Pathologized.
yeah, pathologized
They
and made them.
pathologize natural, like natural experiences, like the variations within birth has been pathologized. So it's like we're not even allowed to be women in birth in that within that system, within that model, and within that
Mhm,
consciousness is like it's so controlled, isn't it? It's so like the parameters are so micromanaged that it's like it's the opposite of what birth is, because birth is this like wild unfolding,
mhm, mhm,
and it needs to just be in the unknown, it needs to be in the
mhm,
mystery, and it needs to be held by very, very strong anchors. And even like the energy of who's in the space, I think makes a huge difference. The energy and
mhm,
the way that they're perceiving you and birth, like if they're seeing you as anything can go wrong at any moment, and we're just looking
mhm,
for this weak moment. Of course, when you get to that place in
mhm,
birth where you're like, I can't do this, you're going to be swept away by that, and transferred
mhm,
in.
mhm,
Whereas I
mhm,
feel like what you're sharing, what I'm seeing is like this cultural revival of trust in women and trust in birth, and bringing back the true meaning of what it means to be a midwife, where now obviously we can't operate within the medical model with licensed midwives, but having birth keepers that are actually there to support, I think, is going to be what's required, for this to start growing and establishing over the coming years, to really start shifting the whole culture away that no, we actually see that birth is best supported at home. And
mhm,
when it does require medical assistance, like in your case where placenta previa, you have very obvious signs of that. There's bleeding happening. You're knowing that that's happening. It's very
yeah.
clear. And in
Mhm,
those rare, rare cases, yes, surgical intervention is life-saving and is amazing that we have that. But that shift is towards, like, in the majority of cases, birth is best supported at home,
mhm, mhm.
without a doubt.
Absolutely, absolutely. Those are the conditions for the mother to enter into the mammalian brain. I read this in my years ago. Michel Odens, the world's leading obstetrician, who, the conditions required for a mother to enter into the mammalian brain, where the physiological process of birth can unfold, are darkness, familiarity, and quietness. Darkness, familiarity, and quietude. So those three things, none of which you have. It's certainly with a stranger poking your cervix, that would obliterate all three of those, with the bright lights, with the noise, with the beep 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 beep. So you're kept in the neocortex, and you're that unfolding can't happen. You can't go back into that instinctual part of the body and instinctual part of the brain. You're kept up here all the time. They're constantly asking you questions. They're constantly pulling your attention externally, and to when you when you have your birth at home. And I had my final, I say my final, I'm 42 now, so I mean, I kind of, that's it, like, the grand finale. The grand finale. And it was funny how it was like the spectrum of experience for birth I had, which
Yeah,
which was perfect, and
yeah.
perfect to make me a spokesperson. um the the free birth, that initiatory feeling, the feeling of being allowed to go into that place and just staying in my own room and not even really engaging with Dear Mid hardly at all, just really in. I was inside, I was in this storm, you know, this the waves coming, like, and I was, you know, riding the waves, like, and then I was the ocean, you know, I was that ocean, like, and I could feel like I could see this cosmic battle within myself of doubt and fear, and how those two things just went, and how my body responded, and the narratives of I'm not able, I can't do this too, I can do that, you know, and this and when I emerged from that night, I emerged with my baby. I emerged a stronger, more powerful woman. I was initiated into my own maturity. I was initiated into my motherhood. Despite having been a mother for 7 years already, I felt for the first time initiated into my motherhood. I have a bond. There's a bond with children that, and an ease and a comfort, and that was so natural and so undisturbed that I didn't have with the others in the same way, you know, that I knew that the being embattled and being in a hostile environment had inhibited my bonding with the children, with the babies from the outset, you know. Now it was healed, but to emerge not having anything to heal, you know, to not have, he has no trauma to heal. Like there's his body's like butter. There's not an ounce of tension in it, you know. I'm always, I lift him up, I'm like, wow. And I noticed that. I noticed like that's different. The lads were holding. I felt them holding, even as babies, you know,
Mm.
and I brought them to cranial sacrals and things. But children, it's just like, you know. And women are not only being deprived of this. When you are deprived of the birth that you want, you are deprived of the initiation that comes with it. And you are also deprived. And what is an initiation? It's a preparation. So the best possible preparation you can have for motherhood is an empowered birth. And if you're taking that away, then the knock-on effects for the mother afterwards as well, like you don't feel ready, you don't feel, most women report, I don't feel ready for motherhood. I'm overwhelmed. It's too much. I'm too young. I feel like I'm just not ready. But with this, with an empowered birth, that feeling of readiness comes, you know. And I would counsel women out there who are considering, you know, who've been deemed high risk. And you know what? That risk assessment is nothing to go by. I feel like I was safer for me to give birth at 41 than it was at 36 because of what I knew, because the muscle memory in my body, because of all that I'd learned. You know, it was much safer, I felt, but according to them, I'm now high risk. You know, so those assessments belong to a kind of a mentality that doesn't really make sense. So I don't give it any credence, and I would counsel women out there not to give it any credence. We need to take away all credence from that system because it has failed us, and it has proven again and again that it's not a credible system. You know, it's not a credible system to poison individual cells to heal people. It doesn't make sense, you know. So we have to withdraw now. We have to withdraw from that. And but there's no alternatives, and that's scary. But as we forge the path, alternatives come around us, and the birth keepers are coming. And these are women who don't have licenses, so they can't be prosecuted. Like they don't have it like a midwife can, you know. And as long as you catch your own baby and the woman is there attending, I think there is a legal point where if the woman attending catches the baby, you know, she could face and penalties, imprisonment, you know, for that. But if she's there assisting you and you catch your own baby, you know, then she's not at risk from being locked up. I mean, you know, these are very real issues. Like, you know,
Yeah.
is it legal? Is it legal? Are we allowed to free birth? Some woman said, I thought it was illegal. So this is like, it's like, of course you're allowed to free birth your own baby. Like, and when I had children, and then we spoke on Joe Duffy, and you know, like, and Joe Duffy says, is that legal? Like that's for people who don't know, he's a, you know, that's a talk radio. I think it's the most popular talk radio in Ireland. And I'm like, yes, absolutely, it's legal, you know. But I mean, but I could feel myself falter, going, Jesus, because I just like, you assume that something so normal would be like, but there is actually laws there that can find a way to penalize women for doing that, and mostly from the women mostly the women assisting would take the penalty. A woman, of course, they can't illegalize that, even though, there might be, might like to. It's not illegal for you to birth your own baby. And it's not illegal for you to be attended to birth your own baby. That's the other thing. You can ask the woman to help. And the woman, she should not be afraid of that. It's like, you can come, and you know what? I can invite 20 people to help me birth my baby if I want. That's legal as well, And it's also legal for me to register my child when I want to register him. It's like, you must go to the hospital, you have to go to a 3-day health checkup. You don't have to do that either. You don't have to get the public health nurse into your home. You don't have to do that. A lot of women who free birthed have to go into the hospital afterwards, or to get that letter to register the baby, and then they get the 3rd degree at that point, or the child has jaundice, or they feel like they have to go in for that 3-day checkup. And then they feel the full lash of the system at that point. Now, I suppose you don't care so much at that point. You have your baby, like, and they can say whatever they want, But what I'm saying is that it's not necessary. It's again, it's part of this cultural program that says we have to do this. This is essential. It's not essential. For registering the child after the birth, they say you have to do it before 3 months, but this is only if you want an automatic PPSN number. We registered Turin last week. He was already 1. At 9 days, I had gone to a GP friend. Now, she wasn't a friend. I mean, she was friendly. I suppose that's what you would say, a friendly GP. And a letter from her and a witness statement from Diarmuid. This was the protocol that the registry office had in place. So now, before, if you free birthed, there was kind of a big inside in the registry office going, I don't know what, there was no bit of a bit of that, like, and usually they call TUSLA, and or they sent you into the hospital to get a letter from a medical person. They need a letter from a medical person. Now, all that letter says, now the BFN form that actually the hospital sends them is the full medical history, it's pages and pages long of the birth and the placenta, the size of the placenta and the duration of the labor, all sorts of medical details is what the registry office get if their child is born in a hospital. They're a bureaucracy. They shouldn't be getting your medical report anyway, your baby's medical report, but that's just the standard procedure. Now, if you go in as a free birth, then they ask for a letter. All that letter says is, I observed the baby. I observed the mother feeding the baby. And the child was 9 days old. And the weight of the child, if they have the weight. And that's it. Like, the health checks and all the rest of that, they don't ask for, because they can't ask for it, because they're not doctors and it's none of their business. So actually, all of that is additional to requirement. And if you look it up online, how to register a baby, and you see that form and you go, merciful hour, like, do I have to fill out that form? And I know free births that actually, people who have gone about trying to fill out that form and getting other medical professions to fill out that form so that they can go in there and not get the 3rd degree. And it's not necessary. So the protocol is there now. You get a witness statement from your partner, or from a woman that attended you, and who need not be in fear also, and this letter, which, I had it from a GP, but I believe that you can have it from anyone with a medical qualification, which would be a homeopath as well. So
Yeah, I had my homeopath write a letter for me, but she is also a registered nurse, so I suppose she had that registration still in place. So I was attending her as like a homeopathic client, and she had actually come in like 2 days after Rian was born, and she witnessed us and saw us together. So she just made like a statement of that. And that was what the registry office in Kilkenny accepted.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
I know another fellow who's an osteopath. So, I mean,
Okay.
these things are very gettable, very
Yeah.
doable. You just go in there, you go in there ready. And now there's a protocol in place. Now you have to send it to their supervisor, so you can't get it done on the spot like you would if it's straightforward hospital birth. They have to send it to the supervisor to approve. You show proof of address, but it's very basic things, very easy, and it's a simple enough process. And now he's registered. So all of that fear mongering around this, you have to do this, and that horrible third degree that you get when you go into the hospital, you know. I mean, it's awful. Like, I could tell you stories like of people having the guards called in them because, you know, they like this kind of none of that is necessary. You just
No.
stay, you stay at home with your baby, and you're like, I
Yeah.
I will encounter this system on my terms with
Yeah.
my child. You know,
Yeah.
so I think
That's very important to share that, because I think women are like, yeah, I want to do this, but then I don't want to have to face all that stress in my early postpartum. So I think what's really important is like the path is being created
mhm,
by every woman that's actually choosing this. It's
mhm,
creating these protocols, it's creating these policies, and it's creating a cultural shift that eventually the registry offices will be understanding that like some people are choosing free birth, some people are choosing the hospital, and there's different choice points, and
mhm.
both are equally valid, and we have to accommodate families who are choosing free birth.
Yes, yes, it's amazing. It's already there. I mean, to compare this to my 7 years ago, like, you know, where
Yeah.
like like now it's a thing.
Yeah.
And back then it was like you couldn't find a birth keeper for love nor money. So
Yeah.
those birth keepers now, the only way that they will get training or what is if they can attend births. And so as doulas, there's an awful lot of doulas around now. For those doulas to graduate to midwives, they need to start witnessing a few births, you know. So inviting in a doula, it gets her the experience, but it's very, like you said, it's very important the energy that's in the room. And you know, really what you need is somebody who you trust when they say it's going to be all right. Like, and if it's a doula who has no experience, you're not really going to trust them so much. But you know that what I'm saying is that there's a whole host of women now with doula training who will in time graduate to midwives, unlicensed midwives, with the experience that they'll gain.
Yeah. So
Um,
so it's like it's I imagine it's this apprentice model that, you know, somebody like a woman who is attending births and she has a lot of experience, that she's inviting in a new birth keeper to witness births and just to be there in the room and to gain experience. She has an apprentice with that elder birth keeper.
yes.
So it's actually this like organic apprenticeship model of like regaining the wisdom of supporting natural physiological birth, and
Mhm,
just all this lost wisdom about like the variations of birth and what that looks like, and how
mhm,
to uphold like the holy sanctity of birth, because it's
mm,
not just a physical experience, it's not just
mhm,
physically birthing, it's like it's a spiritual initiation,
mm,
and that reverence needs to be restored into the space holding, and the
mm,
women who are called into this work, that it's actually it's not, it is a job, but it's a vocation, it's a calling, like it's a spiritual calling.
mm,
And for me, that's what I envision coming back into the culture. And, you know, I plan to have another child at some point, and just thinking of the next generation and how much this is going to be established for our children when they are actually having their families is something that gives me so much inspiration.
mm, mm, mm,
You know, for your beautiful daughter, Eru, to think that Eru will have like a wealth of choices. It's like there's going to be birth keepers, there's going to be circles, there's going to be prenatal villages.
mm,
You know, and
mm,
this is what we're creating. We're creating the blueprint for all of this to start flourishing, and it's
mm,
our true nature as women. It's
mm,
like we're finally tasting the depths of ourselves together,
mm,
you know, and we're
mm,
discovering that. And it's like I discovered that through you, Siobhan. You gave me so much understanding and ignition and just remembrance. Like you activated my DNA to
mm,
go, this is who you are, this is who you are as a woman, this is what you get to claim. And I took the wisdom of your initiation for your first birth in terms of understanding that it can be a 3-day voyage. So I had all that wisdom, just it was just in the room, it was with me,
mhm,
like you were there with me. And that's why story medicine is so important for our psyche, to understand a new story of birth and to understand that birth can be beautiful and it can be empowering. it can be liberating, it
mm,
can be supported, and that life can support this, and life is supporting this. And I think we're replacing all of this deep seated trauma that we've had for generations. And this is what's coming up right now, I think,
mm,
in
mm,
the whole, in our individual selves, but also collectively. Yeah. So just to hear now that how the path has been formed over the past 7 years since you began just gives so much hope for what's possible in the next 7 years and the next decade and the next 2 decades. It's going to be unrecognizable. I feel like the shift will be so massive that it will be, you know, yes, people will still be choosing hospital and that will be still available, but I feel like the majority of women who are awakening and are in this consciousness, like it's inevitable that they would want to choose a home birth and to be
mm,
supported by a wise woman, and to have that support that is actually our birthright as women.
mm, mm. Yeah, and then the preparation comes back to where it's supposed to be, which is preparing your body, like the work that you do, with the nutrition. And
Mhm.
rather than, there's this notion like, are you ready now? Have you got your bag packed? And are you avoiding soft cheese? And are you taking it easy and sitting on your arse as much as possible? And all this terrible advice that you get, but it's not a real preparation. Like if you're preparing to birth at home, like you're like, it's not a passive thing. You have to be very active, because the better
Mhm.
like the healthier your pregnancy, the easier your birth will be. And
Yeah,
that is the way
that's a
it
fact.
goes. Like
That's
that's
a
a
fact.
fact.
That's a
I
fact.
mean, it's
Yeah.
not, the two things are totally connected. Like it's not like, we had complications. I don't know what happened. And it's like, well, how was your pregnancy? Did you really, like, how was the nutrition levels? Like, how was the exercise? It's
Hmm.
You have to go into samurai mode. I mean, again, in the culture, like it's like, it's time to relax. It's time for you to
Mm.
relax. It's like, no, it's not. It's time for you to become an absolute samurai. Like
Samurai. Yeah.
it's samurai time. Like, you have to get up in the morning, even though you feel big and cumbersome, and like do some gentle exercises and do your asanas, and you've got to like not drink a coffee and have a celery juice, and like it's discipline time,
It
you know.
is.
And
Yeah.
you
It is.
pay, like I can see so clearly how I paid in the journeys of the labors, how I paid for each indiscretion in the pregnancy. Like it's just
Hmm.
manifest
Yeah.
in front of me,
Yeah.
like
That's
um
so that is so key, because I think that's where women struggle, because I think we don't have like a framework or a reference point to like, how do I do this? Like what is the pathway? And
mm,
that's why, in my journey it was like I understood that every choice I made would actually have an impact on the birth. So it was like, I remember even at one point, getting a gift of a beautiful homemade chocolate cake. It was like cacao and had flower petals, and it looked absolutely amazing. And I looked at it and I thought, that's lovely, but I can't consume any caffeine because I know that that will impact my adrenals and that will impact my birth, because the stronger your adrenals are, the easier birthing will be, because the strength of the contractions come from the adrenals.
mm,
And without this wisdom, like without women knowing this,
mm,
it's very hard for them to set themselves up
mm,
for
mm.
for birth, because birth is such a mystery, and it's so like unspoken, like nobody knows about it. Or if
Yeah,
they do know about it, it's all like, pretty much horror stories and pretty much stories of disempowerment around that.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so I think
yeah.
that's so key that you
Mm,
shared that. And
mm,
that's the work that I walked that path myself for like 9 months before I got pregnant, and then during the pregnancy. And then I created the Purify program to walk with women through this process, because again, it's critical information that they need to learn how to apply to their own selves, to their own bodies, so that they can claim a healthy pregnancy and birth. Because yeah, otherwise it's like, if you're not doing it consciously, then it's easier for complications to happen and to not know how to handle that at home, and have to then need to have medical interventions of
mm,
some
mm,
description.
mm. Yeah, because you're taking your power back, but you're taking responsibility, and that's really the key. It's like you're taking full self responsibility for your health, for what goes wrong, for what goes right. It's
Mhm.
all on you. Like, and I think if you're at that, that's maybe why some women aren't wanting to do it. They're not at that stage of self responsibility, because that's a stage in human development. But if you are there, this is the path for you.
Yeah,
Anything else, I think, will make you feel like you've compromised, and that's where trauma
yeah,
comes from.
yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Because if you are a woman and you're listening to this, and it's like, that's bubbling up in your consciousness that yes, I do want a home birth. Yes, I do want to claim my power, and I do want to actually take that self ownership. Then this is the pathway to that, because it's like it's actually designed for that very reason, to actually initiate you. It's like one of these key times of initiating into your individuation. And that's what we are really reclaiming, is this sacred rite of passage.
Mm, mm.
And this is what's going to transform the culture at large, because women from that initiation are in a completely different space. And I'd love to bring this into like where you are in your journey now, Siobhan, in terms of your own work, and with your family, and just what you are now creating, and what's emerged from this initiation for you.
Yeah, it's interesting. That was such a threshold, and I felt like, oh, I'm a grown up now at 42. Like I could finally sort of lay claim to feeling like a grown up. And now this we're at another threshold now, and I feel like that was part of it. Like coming into that now has brought us into this other natural threshold, because we were looking for a home for, yeah, a long time. I mean, I guess since I first got pregnant, you just, the first thing you want is a home. And it didn't come when we were living in West Kerry, and we were there 7 years. And so we were like, okay, it hasn't come, it's time to move. And so we moved. We went on the road and we traveled around for about a year. And I became pregnant again with Turin, and we decided to settle in Kilkenny with near the Steiner School here. It's yeah, I mean, it's an exceptional school, and I think the education of your children is really determining factor in where you end up settling. And for us, it was the main determinant of settling here. And we bounced around. I mean, it was hard. We were homeless last Christmas. I felt vulnerable and desperate, and like, what are we doing? And even though there was always something coming. We just had to live in trust for a while. But we would literally, like, we'd stay in a house sit and have to move on in a week, and not really sure where we were going, like. And you have, like, the tent and the camping holiday and everything's fun, like, but when you're pregnant, you're just vomiting and you just want to lie down, like. So it kind of took the fun out of it for me anyway. And it was car sick, like, it's not the time to be in the car. Um,
Mhm.
so all of that, like, and then because we were ungrounded, our health suffered, and the children had, yeah, like, we had a few bad bouts, like, and it was definitely connected with not having a permanent base. And then this friend said to me, oh, and I was pregnant. I mean, Jesus, I was 7 months pregnant with no place to go last Christmas, like, and Ishna's teacher, this community, like, she just offered us this. She's like, it's a very small camp. She was so apologetic, but it was a beautiful little place. And it was just a 1 bedroom. And like, the four of us were in this 1 bedroom place. They used to pull out the futon in the sitting room at night to go to sleep, so that I could sleep on my own and roll around with my and and Turin was born there. But then she needed it for her daughter, who was pregnant, who wanted to birth, and did birth in the exact same spot that I did. And we later found a bunelin stone, that old stone that they used to use for birthing when they excavated. So it was a real vortex place. It was beautiful, but we had to move, like, again and again. Like, where are we going? The rental crisis is very real. Like, I've always been like, oh man, abundance will come, because if you trust and believe, like, but I mean, God, it's bad out there. Like, you're in a bit of a bubble when you have a house. Like, you don't really realize until you're on the edge with your family. And the cheapest thing is 1,500 euros for a month, and they'll only give you that if you have a reference and no dogs or children. You know what I mean? Non-smoking professionals only. Like, it's really difficult. It's really difficult if you don't have that kind of money. And so you just rely on the kindness of strangers, like, and the kindness of friends. And this place came in that way. A friend said, look, there's a house in my family and it's going up in the market soon, but you can go in there in the meantime. And yeah, like, as a friendly arrangement, like, in exchange for kind of fixing the place up. And it was a godsend. We moved into this place, then this old farmhouse that I'm in right now. And we've always had a vision that we could work from home, that we could, our home, where the place that we would buy would have a retreat centre with it, because that's the work that myself and Dermot do in this culture. So we run Irish language weekends with ancestral skills and nature reconnection and ritual and rites of passage and things like that. All this cultural revival stuff, we run those weekends in different places, or as workshops or at festivals, or we're kind of like itinerants going around. But this is a way to bring it home. And you see it because it has the farmhouse, which is a home for us, but it also has a whole load of outbuildings. And it has a big yard that is like a car park, you know. There's a barn for venues, there's a long shed for workshops or a dining room, there's another shed, and there's stables for accommodation. And in the long term, we could get funding for those, because there's actually specific capital funding. Capital, we'll buy the place ourselves, but like for the renovation of it and for the creation of a retreat centre in the long term, we would be eligible for that. So the first stage, I suppose, really, like, this is a threshold now. I feel this, wow, this is the threshold, like to go from coming into owning a place to actually ground in and expand out of a place. I feel the enormity of it. And as soon as we made the decision to buy it, we'll buy it. Like, it's just started to flow. There's just support coming from all directions, and we're calling it in now. And this, it's an increase in capacity. It's a real upgrade. Like, but we, there's the small matter of the 250,000 euros that we don't have, but we have it. Like, it's just, we don't have that much. We need to crowdfund. We need to crowdfund and call that in now. And that's what we're doing. And we're launching the campaign this week. And it's funny that this interview coincided with that, like, because at the time we weren't launching it this week. At the time we arranged our interview. So, like, I suppose, like, for our story together, yours and mine, like, and what we represent is like mothering in the new paradigm, and that's what the birth stuff is about. But this is so much part of that, to bring our work home, to be able to work. Like, we had a deer tanning retreat here. We've already started. Like, we had a deer tanning retreat
Yeah,
here
I
a
saw
couple of
that. It
weeks
looks
ago.
amazing.
It
Yeah, I
was
saw that. It
amazing.
looks class.
And Erin and Ishna just knocking around the place.
Oh yeah.
And
It's
they were
good
just like,
pressure.
and Erin was like looking at them butchering a deer, like, Ishna was like not into it. He's like, I don't like blood. But Erin was down there in the thick of it, like,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
she's just absorbing all these skills. And she said to me afterwards, Mommy, I think I could do it. I saw them do it. I think I could do that now. You know what I mean? Like, but
I
that's
love
what it
it.
is. It's like this village model where the children are at the centre. Yes, we run courses for adults, but provision is made for the care of children. I want to offer what I need. There's what
I
I need
know.
more than anything is for my children to be welcome in all the spaces that I'm welcome in, so that they can learn and grow. Okay, obviously, like, if they're bawling, but you know what I mean, like in a meditation, but within reason, this prohibition on children it's gross, like, and we're talking about coming back to the village. That's why we're learning ancestral skills. That's why all of this cultural revival. But all that is just talk unless the children are at the center of it. Because in the village, the children are at the center of it. They are the heart of the Creolor Dúchasach. They are the heart of it. And I've noticed lately, we really see it now when I go to events, that, like, there's stuff on, like there's a program for children or something like that, where it's kind of like, because we'll have to put on something for the kids, but it's like a peripheral thing, or where the children are central. Like, the difference in the vibe, like,
Mm.
and in the success of it, actually, in the success of it, I think
Yeah.
you could measure the success with how central the children are, because, like, just like, okay, we're going to take care of their needs first, and then we can do what we need to do as
Yeah.
adults,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
when we're all left free, like, and just this magic happens. This magic happens. You can see it. Just everything kicks up an octave, and we're all floating around and going, "This is amazing," Whereas if
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
trying to do our thing, and, like, it's not.
Yeah. No, we can't separate ourselves from the children. Yeah, they have to be the central
Yeah, yeah,
core aspect of everything that we are writing into the new paradigm, that we're co-creating in the new
yeah. For them
paradigm.
to witness you in your work, to witness you, and that's the
Yeah.
way it would have been long ago. And, like, Rian, or your future daughter, sees you doing what you're doing, like, and then they just absorb all those skills. Whereas if you
Yeah.
have to go off out to work, and some children don't even know what their parents do, and they never learn,
Hmm.
and then they don't help mommy and daddy with work, and it's not this, the family structure is totally undermined that way. Like, if we can bring people, and the other thing is, I want teachers for my children. Like, I know they need teachers more than me,
Yeah. Yeah.
beyond me, and beyond what they have in the Steiner school. Like, she's teaching
Hmm.
them how to read and write, and they're great. But beyond that, they,
Yeah.
like, when we had this master craftsman down here doing the hide tanning, like,
Hmm.
like, I want Erin Nishan to be around that guy. Like,
Hmm.
I want to
Yeah.
bring people here, and for them to, and or Garrod, who was doing the cooking, and he was showing her, like, she was eating broccoli and things that she'd never eaten before, because he was cutting it in a certain way, and he
Mm.
was like there catering to 20 people and still had time to, like, cut veg for the child, and like, just the, or another fella, like, fixing his bike and showing him how to do wheelies, and like, all that richness came to my family because we did a retreat here, and they were thanking us. But it's like, I want to call in that richness for my family. I want to call in those teachers for my children,
Yeah.
and this is like the best way. It's just like, it satisfies every requirement that I have right now.
Yeah.
um so yeah, with all my heart, I want it. And if anyone wants to support this vision, like, and it's community building as well, like, anyone who supports it, because of the way we've structured it with rewards, they get to
Hmm.
come here. They get to come here and experience it, so that hopefully everybody.
I can't wait to come with Rian.
Oh God, Ashley, I mean, you could do something here, like,
Yeah.
there's a
I'd love to.
lovely, yeah, yeah, I'd love you to. I
Yeah.
really want to do a birth story day as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just for mothers and children, and we come, we just share,
Mm.
like, but all these, and it's all possible now. It's just easy. It's like, I can make a decision to do it next
Yeah.
week, because I put
Yeah.
up the bell tent with a beautiful wooden floor. It's gorgeous down there,
Mm.
and a view of a river down the back, Ash. Yeah.
A dream.
It's just like, so it's a dream, and it's a strong dream, and it's just like, but we were working it out today. Dermot's like, if we put 80,000 on this crowdfund, then we're going to need to make €1,000 a day. I was like, €1,000 a day? He's like, that's what it works out at. And I was like, oh Jesus, Mary and Joseph. So we're feeling the pressure, but we're staying in the
Yeah.
trust, like,
Yeah. You're in the birth
um,
canal. You can, you're in the birth
yeah,
canal. So let
yeah.
everyone know where they can find you and how they can support the crowdfunding. Give us
Yeah.
all the details. So, and I will include all the links below this video as well, but just to
Okay,
express here.
cool. Yeah. Well, I'll putting a page up on wildirish.ie,
Hmm.
and and my own endearments, dearmadling.ie, sarahdepaor.com is me, Siobhan De Paor, sarahdepaor.com. And there's Wild Irish is our Instagram, Facebook. And yeah, we're raising it as ourselves, for a family and a cultural centre. So it's like, it's Dearmadling, Siobhan De Paor, and Wild Irish. It's kind of those three sort of points,
Yeah.
that we're drawing in.
Amazing. Thank you so
So
much.
that's
Thank
it.
you so much, Siobhan,
Yeah, thank you,
for
Ashley.
everything.
Thank you. Yeah,
Thank you so
yeah,
much. And we'll talk soon.
yeah. Let's. All
Okay.
right. Thank you so much,
Take
love.
care.
Good
Bye.
morning.